Unconstitutional awakening program.
Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Brought to you by KD Consulting Redesign.
I'm enjoying the joy.
Ahoy there, everyone. It's time to set sail on another episode of Unconstitutional Awakening. This evening, I found some stuff that I figured I wanted to bring to everyone's attention because you know how I feel about government overreach in general, and I found a story of government overreach that is honestly just quite out ridiculous. For you folks that, aren't familiar, it's kind of a controversial issue that is probably going to impact many people. And I found a group of people that are trying to do something about it. If you guys aren't familiar with what eminent domain is, the government comes in and tries to take something from you and claim that it's theirs so that they can move on with something. But these folks have tried to pass a resolution that's going to extend the turnpike out there. And, this is potential destruction of homes and wildlife and pollution and so much more. So I thought it would be important to bring these guys to your attention. So first things first, how's everyone doing this evening?
Great. Wonderful. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I've seen this was a way of something that I could do to try to help. Like when it comes to government corruption, I am the first person to sit there and scream about it. And now I'm sitting here all these years later as things are coming to fruition and the veil has been lifted on so many things. And I'm just like, well, I guess it's time to go and talk more publicly than it is to just hide behind memes all the time. And so here we are. So I gotta ask, who's in charge of this operation? There's so many of you here this evening.
They are.
Well, I guess I'm the president of Pike OTA, the organization that's endeavoring to stop this turnpike and the Turnpike Authority from ever doing this again.
Yeah. OTA stands for Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, if you're not familiar, and they're the ones that are trying to take over, take a lot of our property and expand an unnecessary turnpike throughout the state of Oklahoma. So, Michael, go ahead and I'm sorry, I'll just get you the people a little background. Who's listening doesn't necessarily know what OTA stands for. So,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely an acronym that we're going to need to know going forward. OTA is the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, and for what it's worth, ODOT, Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Any other acronyms that we're going to be using prolifically?
Say that again, please.
Are there any other acronyms that we're going to be using prolifically through?
ODOT, OTA, possibly OTC.
Yeah, MF. Is that all right?
Yeah. The O and all of those stands for the state of Oklahoma. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. As of,
that would clearly make sense.
Except for OMG.
Oklahoma Natural Gas.
So if the rest of the team would introduce themselves, and I can jump into a little bit of history.
Please, I would like if you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves for everyone that's out there listening. We all know Luis and Ox and Bandit. They're my regular guys on here, but may I please get a sound off from the rest of you?
You bet. Go ahead, Amy.
My name's Amy Cerato. I'm a professional civil engineer and a homeowner that's directly impacted by one of the 3 new alignment routes through Cleveland County. And we all started this together, this new time, February 22nd of this year. But Dave Moore, who can go next, he was a fighter back in the 90s. Dave?
Thank you. I'm Dave Moore. I'm a CISSP. I started doing this in the 90s, and we had some good success. Everyone else, they are the new generation of turnpike fighters, and I have nothing but full admiration for all of them.
All right, Dave, I guess it's my turn. I'm Randy Carter. I, like Amy, am directly affected by this turnpike. If I sit in the living room, I'm in the middle of the turnpike. There's traffic going north and traffic going south right on either side of my favorite chair. If the turnpike does come through, they are proposing to take mine and about 500 or 600 more homes in this area through the eminent domain process. And the eminent domain is the threat. They will come in and try to negotiate with people before they have to go to eminent domain. But eminent domain is the ultimate threat to the property. And then, of course, they're going to say the routes haven't been finalized yet, but yet we know that they've been told. The engineering firms that are under contract now, they've just been issued a $123 million contract going out to various engineering firms to go ahead and start working on the engineering for these routes. And they've been told not to vary from the original route as it's been drawn, even though publicly the Turnpike Authority says we don't know what the routes haven't been finalized yet. So it's a little bit of a bait and switch, it seems to me.
You're actually you were the first thing I had seen dealing with this. I was sitting there thumbing through Facebook, and I had seen the story where they're basically coming after a house that you yourself have built and have been in for quite some time, actually.
Yeah. I've actually built 2 homes here. I built the first one in about 1980. That particular home, I drew the designs, I poured the concrete, I built the walls, I plumbed the pipes, I ran the wires, I did everything myself. So to say I'm a little bit attached is maybe an understatement. Second house I built, I got married again after I re-enlisted. My wife wanted a new house, and so I built a second house. This house I was the general contractor on, so I did a lot of the work myself, but I can't claim to have done everything. But yes, I've lived out here since about 1979 on this corner, and it's kind of my corner, and I'm maintaining a stiff upper lip, but it really is breaking my heart with the idea that it may be taken away. And I've told people one of the saddest things about it is if they do come in and take my home away from me, I'll have to clean out all my own crap instead of my kids getting to do it after I'm gone. So that's just not fair.
Hey, I mean, that's it. As dark as that sounds, ain't that what they're usually there for? In the end of that, it's their job to clean it up.
Well, that's one of the things we've trained them for, isn't it?
I mean, you come on. We spend most of our life cleaning up after them, so that's our opportunity to get it back a little bit. Oh, so Amy, you said your house as well is being directly affected by this, correct?
Yep, we have a house directly north of Randy's, 10 acres, and the center line of the median, the 60-foot median in that 6-lane turnpike is right through our living room. And like Randy said, this is the most destructive turnpike and actual highway construction in all of Oklahoma's history. It's going to take more than 15 homes per mile. And the last turnpike they did that wasn't authorized, and we'll talk about the authorization and the government tyranny a little bit later, but the other turnpike that they just did that we didn't know about, because the OTA has a playbook, and the playbook is come at this small number of people and hope that no one else knows about it, so they can steal your house and put this roadway that no one needs and then move on to the next. And so the last turnpike they did in 2016 was finished in 2020, 21. That took 104 homes total, so about 5 homes per mile. And then the previous one back in the early 90s, the Kilpatrick, took only 6 homes. And so they're ramping up their destruction and their wanton destruction of property rights and the environment as the decades go on. And it's not really because it has anything to do with engineering, which breaks my heart as an engineer. It has everything to do with power and money and making the 100 contractors and people rich on the backs of 4.4 million Oklahomans. And people don't know about the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority until it's directly impacted you. But once you know about it, you want to stop it, because it is absolutely insane how much power that one state agency has over the rest of Oklahoma. They are literally the money-making corruption mafia of Oklahoma that pays out their dividends to their favorite few time and time again. And they have the establishment, no matter if it's a Democrat establishment back in the 90s and the 80s, or it's a Republican establishment, which is now, they have them as puppets, what they want them to do. And it's been very eye-opening to me, but very frustrating too, to know what the truth is and to know what the right thing to do is, and to watch the elected officials wantonly ignore the public and the citizens and do the bidding of those that fund their campaigns. And so even if they move the route off my house, I would still be in this fight, because this type of government overreach has to stop. And if no one stands up against it, then it will always keep going. And so Pike Off OTA is thousands strong. And we really, really hope, with the help of those that have fought before, that we can finally put an end to the stress and the wanton destruction of people's lives.
You had made mention that, these other ones had taken houses as well. And, personally, one, from my perspective, one is too many. Like I see no means whatsoever that they should be coming in and taking people's homes for highways. I grew up kind of all over the place. I spent some time in Texas. That was the closest to Oklahoma I think I've ever been. I've passed through, but that's about it. But I'm down in Georgia, and my grandparents come from Georgia and such. And they've showed me stories and places where the interstate wasn't, and before it was. And then the most recent thing I can remember that got me thinking when you were just speaking just now is down here a couple of years back, they convinced everybody to approve this gas tax so that they could expand the highway. And instead of expanding the highway, they built a pay lane. And everybody's still paying the tax, and they're having to pay for the pay lane as well. So I really don't think this kind of stuff is honestly just in places like Oklahoma. This is why I thought this was important, because I've seen it in Georgia, I've seen it in Pennsylvania, I've seen it in New York State.
Yes.
And the
San Francisco
road,
bridge should be free.
Yeah, they're always the first thing I always hear from what I would call a statist, no offense to anybody out there, but what I would call somebody that still thinks that there's ways to fix the system by using the system, they're always asking me about their roads. And I'm just like, what about them? They're terrible. My road, I can point out for a fact, actually, hasn't even been paved since 2002.
I think I could speak to that.
I grew up in Illinois.
Yeah.
Some of the worst roads in the nation.
I think it's important to make a distinction between roads and toll roads.
Sure.
Because that's what this fight is all about.
Sure.
Because, of course, we need good roads. Everybody knows that. But the toll roads, I don't know so much about other states, but I know about Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma doesn't pay to build them, and they don't make a dime off the tolls, not a penny. And so while there is plenty of funding to build good roads, that's not what toll roads are all about. Sure. Toll roads are an economic development tool, period.
Yes, I will say, that when I lived in New York State, I learned quite a bit about them, because there is a lot of toll roads in and out of New York State. If you don't know back roads when you're trying to go down to visit like Erie, PA and Amish country and stuff like that, you end up paying out the butt to just drive on something already that, why? That's always been a big question that I've had is why? Why am I paying all this money to take this extra road?
It's really hard to sell the roads. That's the thing. In Puerto Rico, come from Puerto Rico, worst roads in the entire country, I would say, because literally we have craters. We call them the moons. The Puerto Rico's roads are just a moon. You're just driving over the moon. And many of the highways, the majority of the highways are all private. And they're not even owned by Americans. They're owned by other, even like people in other countries. Like the airport, it's owned by Mexicans. Like in Puerto Rico, they sold everything. It's an example of that's coming into many parts of the United States. Like they're privatizing things because it's a quick way to make a hell of a lot of money, and it looks clean. That's the thing. It looks clean.
I had a friend that just posted that he had driven through Pennsylvania and driven on the turnpikes with the tag pass or whatever it is, where they just read your tag. He got a bill later. He'd driven through the turnpike system. He got a bill for $108.
Lovely.
Literal highway robbery.
No doubt.
Louisville, Kentucky has a toll bridge going across the river into Indiana. And it costs you on just like the to go and return trip. It's something like $32 just to travel the toll bridge.
Wow. That's exorbitant.
The pay lane that I made mention of that they built down here, that toll lane that they ended up building, it starts like 3 exits up from my exit, like I'm down past it, and it goes all the way to Atlanta. So it's only like a 35-mile, not even, toll lane, but it will cost you $17 to go halfway up it. Like it's ridiculous at the amounts of money that these companies are making off this, because like the one down here in Georgia happens to have some kind of deal connected with Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, and all their little pay tags, just like you were just talking about, are interchangeable and interchargeable between those states. So that lets me know that they're all in the same company.
Yes, they are. I think it's important, and this is one of the most misunderstood things out there, is people don't know the difference between a paid road and a pay-as-you-go road. And toll roads are you pay every time you drive on it. Paid roads would be in Oklahoma, funded by ODOT, and the taxpayers and responsible to the taxpayers. But the toll roads thing is a whole different. It's like the more you dive into it, the creepier it gets.
Yeah, and what I talked about, it's all about money. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, their projections for their justification of these new toll roads has been on average, for their revenue generation, has been on average 63% correct. In fact, on one toll road, they were only 24% correct, and the majority of their turnpikes actually don't make money. So their revenue take is about $330 million a year. Their debt service on their $1.7 billion bonds that they use to build them is about $130 million. Now they're asking for $5 billion extra dollars, billion with a B, okay, for these roadways that are going to destroy our homes and destroy the environment. That would put their debt service above their revenue take. So what do they have to do? They have to raise tolls. So now if it costs you $100 to get to work for a month, it's going to cost you $200 or $300 to get to work a month. So the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has this thing called cross-pledging. It was supposed to be a free road. So they built the first road in the 50s. It was supposed to be free in the 80s. Mm-hmm. But the really smart, corrupt politicians wrote this cross-pledging bill in 1954 that gave them the ability to take one turnpike and pay for the other turnpike. So the turnpikes don't even have to make money in Oklahoma. They just build them, get their contractor buddies all the money that they want, and live in debt for the rest of their life. So if they take this $5 billion out and they're allowed to do it, they will have more debt than the entire state of Oklahoma. One company, one instrumentality of the state. We gave them sovereignty of the state so they can take eminent domain, but they're a private entity in terms of getting the toll money. So the money part blows my mind, how the citizens of Oklahoma or the elected officials of Oklahoma can allow this to continue. And maybe Michael wants to talk more about that part of it.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take your listeners back down memory lane a little bit, kind of story time. So kindle up the fire and pull up a seat. Back in like 1947, there was a problem. We had Tulsa up and coming metropolitan area, and we had Oklahoma City, already established metropolitan area. We wanted to connect the two. We wanted to connect the two in a very efficient, easy manner. This was before the interstate system. And so somebody had the brilliant idea, I think adopted from somewhere on the East Coast. I don't remember which state was the first. I think there were a handful, to build a road kind of on spec on using tolls as the revenue generating source. This is before selling municipal bonds. Tax-based bonds was really a big thing. And so kind of the hippest and hottest new thing was toll-based, toll-backed bonds. And so they built the Turner Turnpike, which connected Oklahoma City to Tulsa. Make perfect sense. In fact, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority's mission statement is to connect distant metropolitan areas. And then on the next go around, I don't recall which turnpike it was, but they found they couldn't afford that turnpike by itself, and they weren't really 100% sure they was going to be able to pay for itself. So they decided cross-pledging makes sense. So the success of the Turner could then supplement the lack of funds from the new turnpike until it gets up, gets its wings, and can take flight on its own. By the time the Turner was complete, a couple of years after that, the interstate system was introduced. But by that point, we'd already let the genie out of the bottle. We already had this instrumentality of the state, had power of eminent domain that was now, like any good bureaucratic system, just a nerd inside a cubicle trying to find work to do, even if there's none existent. So fast forward about 20, 30 years. In the late 80s, there's a series of turnpikes, one of which was predicted to do terribly, the Chickasaw. In fact, that is the one and only turnpike that was eventually sold, at least in part, back to ODOT.
It's a 2-lane turnpike.
It's a 2-lane turnpike. I think it carries, I think it makes less than $1 million a year. The Chickasaw.
The Chickasaw. Yeah.
I don't remember how many vehicles per day, but I think it was less than 1,000 or around 1,000. So kind of like a
week.
Kind of like a busy neighborhood.
And you'll notice, Jim Bob, that Oklahoma has a perverted habit of naming turnpikes after famous Indian tribes, almost as if to rub it in their face.
Those are politicians.
Right.
But, in this, now we're not anti-progress. In fact, the Turner, now had they waited a couple of years, they would have gotten funding from the federal government.
Chickasaw for everybody that's watching. Actually, I had to pull that up. Like that. That blew my mind when you told me it was a 2-lane toll road. That just.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
Do you guys know how much money the contractors made on this?
Not on that particular project, but we do have some numbers coming up on the newer ones. But this is all in the name of progress. The first set of toll roads connecting faraway metropolitan areas like Tulsa and Oklahoma City opened up commerce. It was fantastic. Now, the Turnpike Authority did propose a new turnpike that connected Oklahoma City to the Kansas border. Luckily, the interstate system was instituted before they were able to come to a conclusion on that. Otherwise, I-35 would have been a toll road. But today, their emission savings deviate a little bit. With growing metropolitan areas, now you no longer need to connect them, but you also need to bypass them. So now inside of their emission saving, you got to connect and bypass major metropolitan areas to avoid major congestion inside of the city proper. Well, at some point, I guess, now these are entities that view themselves as long-term, far-reaching, far-looking authorities that are looking, 50 years in the future, 75, 100 years, far much further down the road than us mere mortals. They got the good crystal balls from Costco, whereas we got to shop at Walmart. Now, what they do is they build a bypass to go around the town, but they stopped looking far in the future. They started designing these bypasses that were no longer bypasses, because a bypass, it should be so far out that it's almost uncomfortable how far out it is the day it's built. 20 years later, it should feel just about right. Then maybe 75 years, maybe at that point, the city is starting to creep in. Well, starting with the creek and the Kilpatrick, there's legislatively authorized in the late 80s. These two turnpikes were built right on the cusp of Oklahoma City, around the Yukon area, and around Tulsa. These aren't actually bypassing these major metropolitan areas. They're putting these major metropolitan areas in a stranglehold. By the time they're completed, you already had neighborhoods pouring out to the other side of them. And at that point, the people that are unfortunate enough to live in these neighborhoods are now doomed to paying $100 a month just to drive to work. And here with the Norman Turnpike, again, they're repeating their mistake, one of many mistakes. They're driving this right through the middle of Norman. Like, if you look at the geographical boundaries in Norman, this is going straight through the middle. It's going right between Norman and its major water supply, Lake Thunderbird, right down the watershed. Now, they say that they can mitigate any kind of storm runoff to prevent pollution from going into the lake itself. Now, they could put a bunch of rocks and crap in there to catch chemicals and whatever runoff comes from automobiles and even wrecked automobiles, whatever. But it's got to go somewhere. All the homes in that area are on well water. You got two options. Either you let it run into Lake Thunderbird and pollute, 80,000, the water or the drinking water of 80,000 homes, or you capture it, let it go straight down and pollute the well water of the 20,000 in that immediate area. But we ask them, simple question: why? Is this the best route? Why are you doing this route? And that's the one question they just flat out refuse to answer. And the thing is, when they have put these communities into a stranglehold, remember this Access Oklahoma plan, the only revenue generating source of it's supposed to be this these extensions going through Norman, which may or may not even be legal. Even if they were built, at best, they would make about $20 million a month, maybe $40 million, based on their engineers' most optimistic estimates. The whole project's coming at a price tag about $5 billion, which is going to be $270 million a year just to pay the bill, which isn't going to come from the project itself. So where's it going to come from? It's going to come from the Kilpatrick. It's going to come from the creek. It's going to come from all the other turnpikes that already have these communities in a stranglehold. Without their consent, without their knowledge, one day they're going to wake up and all of a sudden their monthly bill to drive to work is going to be, instead of 100, it's going to be like gas. It's going to be 300. And they're going to look back at the days that they paid $150 to go to work and think, man, if only we could go back to then. That's going to be like $1.89 gas to us today. And as much as we protest, you'd think that our legislation, if truly working on behalf of the people, you'd think that they would pass legislation for just the simple request to make sure that they're not screwing up our water source. Even that fails in our state Senate, in our state House. Why? Well, because the people aren't as important as the corporations, as the companies that are leading this thing. Because that $5 billion for that Access Oklahoma plan, you can assume that about maybe 20 to 30 billion of it is going to be scraped off as profit margins to the engineering contracting companies, paid out instantly. Another $3 billion is going to be paid out over the course of 30 years as profit to the bondholders. And that is why the people no longer matter, because the people that are making decisions are looking at these profit margins, and they would sell their own mother to be looking at $3 billion.
Just obstructions to be gotten out of the way.
Yeah, don't forget a portion of that profit that's going into the pockets of those politicians that are not going to pass legislation to save you.
Mm-hmm. They're always going to get their kickbacks. That's just how it works.
Always, man. And what brings about when they destroy these neighborhoods, when they bring toll roads through and they destroy these small neighborhoods, another destructive force to the environment that usually comes about when they bring these in is urban sprawl.
Yes, high density.
Yeah.
Jeez, man, there is nothing uglier in a topographical map than urban sprawl, especially if it's poorly designed to urban sprawl, gated communities, cul-de-sacs, everything. That is just one of the biggest eyesores.
It's what's destroyed a portion of the economies of the United States is because of that, because of the distances. We need density to an extent when we have high population numbers. It's more it's better for the environment.
An interesting point. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
The city of Norman actually just tipped their hand to that. So the citizens of Norman do not want this. But the city of Norman has an engineer who's the father of an engineer who works for Poe And Associates in the OTA. So he tipped his hand in a transcript article, a local newspaper article this weekend, that they knew about this, that they were in on it, and that they were going to change our zoning to go to high density. So right now, East Norman is 1 house per 10 acres. Okay. It's agricultural and rural residential. And you cannot split those down to go high density right now. You are not allowed. But as soon as that turnpike goes through, you know what our friend Mr. O'Leary said? He said he's open to looking at rezoning East Norman to bring in high density. And so they knew and they know, and they are going to usurp what the citizens want and what's good for, like Michael said, our Lake Thunderbird, and where we get our drinking water, just for paying those 100 people on the backs of all of our citizens. So
I think we need to invent a new term. Urban sprawl doesn't quite cut it. It's more like corrupt sprawl or political sprawl or something. We can't blame it on the urban, because that's not what's at fault. It's collusive sprawl. I don't know what you would call it, but something. Because urban sprawl, it sounds too pretty, urban sprawl, what's that?
Well, to kind of touch on what you guys were saying, I mean, I live in an area that is a victim of that, political sprawl or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, I live in the middle of suburbia. I'm about an hour outside of Los Angeles. The traffic out here gets so fucking bad, you guys, that you literally have to use. I've
been on the 405. I know.
The 405 is enough to make anyone want to
forget about it.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And it has no toll lanes. But the toll lanes out here, because it's so dense, right? All the population is so dense that the toll lanes are your only reprieve from that traffic. It's absolutely brutal, and that's everybody's fate if they keep populating densely.
That's how they pitch it.
Paying 20 million, right? LA is like 20. The area is 20 million people.
I think, something like that. It's.
And I wish we could say that this was entirely an eminent domain problem. But one of the things that the OTA prides themselves on is that they don't really take a lot of properties through eminent domain. And to their credit, that's somewhat true. They're able to talk most people into selling before going into the formal condemnation process and procedures. And therein lies a problem that most people aren't really acknowledging right now, is that when that happens, there's a certain eminent domain is kind of one of those necessary evils that, for Children's Hospital, force that guy to give up his house because it saves a lot of kids' lives, whatever. But when you got to give up your property for the greater good, at least you like to think that it's an identifiable greater good of the community, you at least have a few protections put in place by the state. One of which being the right to fair market value. In our state's case, I'm not sure what other states is in, but we get the right of first refusal. If our property is taken through eminent domain for a project that then for whatever reason doesn't use it and it becomes surplus, you get the right of first refusal to buy it back before it goes up to auction.
You get the right to take it to a trial if you want to. If you just don't accept any of their offers, you can go to trial, go to court.
But the thing is that when you sell early, when you negotiate to sell to the OTA without going through the formal condemnation process,
right,
you give up those rights.
Yes, you do.
You're unaware that you're being defrauded of those rights, as we've seen recently as I think back in June, there was an auction selling off surplus land from the OTA that there was a guy there who, with tears in his eyes, was hoping to get his property back, like his family's land. He was just hoping that he'd be able to buy it back after it ended up not being used in a project. He ultimately lost the auction. He didn't have that much money with him, and most of the people there. Yeah, most of the people there were like real estate developers, home builders and the like, and they outbid him very quickly, and he didn't get his property back. He had no idea that he was losing that right, just like nobody else. Like the vast majority of people that are giving up their properties have no idea that they're giving up that right to the fair market value and the right to first refusal if it becomes surplus.
Yeah, they want you to cut a deal ahead of time before they have to go through the eminent domain process.
Well, of course they do.
Yeah. And now when we contact the Attorney General is appointed by our governor who is spearheading this project. We don't get our calls returned.
No. Don't get anything returned except a big one of these. That's what you get.
That's just flat out awful. But go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, could you throw up that one picture I sent that has the map that Michael made, the GIS map that shows all the authorization areas in Oklahoma?
I sure can.
Because, some people that live in different areas of our state and even outside of our state are thinking, well, it's only 600 people or it's only 600 families. But in 1987, like Michael was talking about, the state legislators authorized the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to build in all these different areas, 35 different areas. And they built some. How long was 1987? So that's a generation ago. How can a government agency make plans based on a decision, make a corrupt decision? Oh, it's actually the picture I sent.
No problem. Refill it.
Oh, I can. You can see my back.
I got it right
back here. See,
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's with all the authorized.
It's James Robert.
Right, there's 600,000 people that are already.
Nobody on your town will have one of those shirts, but you.
Yeah,
600,000 people living under the gun in pre-authorized areas that may sit back and think, there's no reason that they'd build a turnpike out here. We're safe. That's exactly where they're building turnpikes, is where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And so this was authorized, and check this out. So now if you live anywhere in those shaded areas, you have a gun pointed at your head because they could come and take land anywhere in those areas. The statute says in the vicinity of, within 30 miles of the eastern border of Oklahoma. But they don't tell you where they're going to put the road until they have the design completely done. They announce it and they go. They told the Kickapoo folks in 2018 that it would be a 5-year project. Within 18 months, all the houses were bought and they raised every single house and had it done. Some people had 90 days to vacate their homes. They got the letter. They declined the offer. They had the appraisers come out and give another offer. They declined that, and they went to eminent domain, and the OTA 24 hours later said, get out. 90 days to vacate. It is insane. And so this is bigger than Cleveland County. This is actually bigger than Oklahoma. This is a national problem. I mean, check out the Kelo versus New London 2004 Supreme Court ruling, where they said that Pfizer could come in and take out all these homes in New London, Connecticut, because it was the greater good. It was increasing the tax base of New London. So they wiped out all these lower income homes, displaced all these people. And then Pfizer's like, oh, you know what? New London didn't give us enough tax breaks. We're out of here. To this day, they haven't built anything on that spot, on that place. And if you want to know more about that, there's a great movie called The Little Pink House. And it talks about that court case. And we're hoping that the Supreme Court will look at that case. And then our state will come up with stricter constitutional laws for eminent domain to make it harder for the government to take our land. Because after the Kelo decision in 2004, 26 states made changes to their constitution about eminent domain. Oklahoma did not. And so it is very easy for a government agency to come take our homes versus eminent domain. When we think about, we're thinking about through Pike off OTA, doing an initiative petition from the people to change our constitution and to change those laws on eminent domain. And we're thinking about a whole bunch of different items to protect the citizens from this government overreach. And so it's our problem now, but it's 600,000 Oklahomans' problems in 5 to 20 years on legislation made in 1987, when the Secretary of Transportation was the same person as the Oklahoma Department of Transportation director, who is the same person as the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority director. And guess what? We have that same problem right now. The same man is the director of all three of those agencies.
Yep. He is.
So, I mean, you know.
And no explanation required. We want your place. You get out of the way. No explanation required. No, nothing. They don't have to go before any board and prove their case. They don't have to show up and do, this is why we really need it. Nothing. All they have to do is say, get out of the way. We're coming in.
Well, we do have a transportation commission. It's chaired by a real estate developer.
Oh, God.
And it sounds like China more and more.
Oh, it gets deeper.
And every person on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority board was appointed by the governor, who is a corrupt businessman, actually from Georgia. Who's from Georgia? Yeah, so he had a mortgage company that something corrupt happened with, and then he came to be the governor of Oklahoma. And they
were fined and all that stuff.
Yeah, he's done a lot of shady things. And one of the things was change his executive powers to be the only person to appoint these people to the board. So he controls everything. If they go against him, it's bad news. And so they put a lot of not educated, but unqualified people on those boards to just say, yes, they're rubber stamping boards. That's all they do.
I had to pull him up really quick. Kevin Stitt. I'll call him out. I know what you're talking about. And I do remember all that stink down here in Georgia. I'll
just say this, and then I'm going to be quiet for a while. But
is that possible?
We're going to find out. The thing that bothers people the most about this stuff is, for most people, this is the first time they've ever come up against a government agency that is so aggressive, that is so non-yielding in what they want to do. They are aggressive, that they just say, look, you just might as well give up now. This is a done deal. We're going to do this. It's going to happen. And for most people, they've never ever had to deal with such an idea in their whole lives. People live their lives, they got jobs, they got a family, they're just trying to get along and be good people. And now they're being confronted with this, and it just blows their minds.
I mean, a lot of it is just drawing me speechless because, the more you guys talk, the more it's just like, so basically everybody that's supposed to be a leader or an elected official there is all padding their pockets and just doing what they need to do to keep those pockets padded.
Oh yeah, we made the national news on several radio shows. I don't know if you listen to Wendy Bell Radio, conservative radio show talk show host out of Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We made her talk show as the worst state, that no constitutionalists were elected and the establishment Republicans just walked all over everybody because they're all corrupt. And then we made another national syndicate, Stu Peters, on some corruption in the campaign financing. And so we have some significant depth and breadth of corruption, just plain and simple. And
we're top 10 state.
We're top 10 state in that, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
Let me go back and make a little point here. Amy was talking about it earlier. The projections that the Turnpike Authority hires a company to do that projects what the revenues will be. Like she said, they were only 63% accurate. But the problem with that is that those projections are what the bonds are rated on and sold on, so that the people that are buying those bonds think the revenue is going to be 100%, yet historically it's only 63%. And when I was in school, if I got a 63, that was an F. It's a failing business model that they're continuing to repeat over and over and over again, and all they're doing, the debt is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's my belief that the main driving force behind all of this expansion is to generate this bond, to sell all these bonds so they can pay off the bonds they haven't been able to pay off in the past, and create a bigger bond picture that generations down the road are going to be stuck with a gigantic bond indebtedness that, they'll just have to build more turnpikes to generate more bonds to pay for the bonds that they couldn't pay for before. It's just kicking the can down the road, and it's not going to solve any kind of problems. That's one of the big frustrating parts to me, is that that's how they're doing it. It's a failed operations model that they're continuing to operate.
And so
and as bad as this sounds, it's a failed operations model, most definitely from the perspective of somebody with more than 2 firing brain cells. But somebody that is trying to make a buck, it is a perfect model, because obviously it's continuing to keep that money in their pocket. And I mean, that's at the heart of it. I mean, really, truly, at the heart of everything that I've heard from you guys this evening is that you guys are just in a pit of corruption out there, and it sounds like it's time to roll it over and start anew, to be honest.
And it's so just to put it in perspective for your listeners to understand. So the Oklahoma Department of Transportation uses federal dollars to build their roadways, and they can build their roadways for a specific dollar per mile. So they have to use the lowest bid. They have to have all these protections in the place. So they can build, just say they can build a road for a highway, a super highway, for $7 to $10 million per mile. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority cannot do that. Their average price is $50 to $60 million per mile. Why? Because they're paying off what do they call that? Bid
rigging? Yes,
bid rigging. Thank you. Bid rigging. So they're paying their contractors $100,000 for a $10,000 job. So their OTA spends 5 to 20 times more per mile than a state agency should, because it's money back to their favorite contractors. And if you look back over the last 35 years, the same 10 firms have done all of their work. The same legislators who are putting bills in to expand their empire are turning around and taking contracts from them on the flip side. they don't have to sign a conflict of interest statement. And so we ended up stopping one of those representatives' bills. He was so angry with us. It was the first time that an OTA bill had ever been stopped. But he was a contractor who was putting in an extension to one of the existing roads because he had the contractor ready to build it. Don't you have to disclose that when you're in the state house of
accountability? What?
And he's still there.
And he's still there, and he still got reelected. And so it's just, it's so frustrating to watch.
It's embarrassing.
What do you guys think is then one of the best routes to build defense mechanisms for the everyday person in Oklahoma? Because it looks like they're starting with this, and like you're saying, eventually it grows. And,
what alternatives do we think are good to pick? Is that the question?
Like, what type of laws and what type of actions you think are real solutions to prevent this? Outside, obviously, you're more like the main point is calling it out mainly, which is this. And what do you see as the route in relation to possible laws that prevent this from occurring in the future?
Eminent domain reform.
Yeah,
a silver bullet to
that will never happen.
To stop all corruption is
local state reform could happen. I'm not saying nationwide reform is ever going to happen. That's true.
That puts too much money in politicians' pockets.
Well, when agencies feel they have full authority to just take people's property away and there's no opposition, that's where we are now. And so this whole notion of eminent domain needs to completely be redefined in Oklahoma.
Now, if I were to, just kind of brainstorm out loud, I would think that if we get, the Supreme Court to reevaluate the Kelo case, there's a stark difference between this project and this use of eminent domain and eminent domain as it was originally intended and established. Valid uses of eminent domain have a solid sequence of facts that can project that project or that use is going to have a tangible benefit. This project and other projects like turnpikes and like taking housing for economic development, these are all speculative in nature. There is no solid string of facts and there's no mathematical way to model that there will be a benefit from that use of eminent domain. And uses of eminent domain that are purely speculative, leave that in Vegas. That has no place in our Constitution or our country.
It is never okay to forcefully come in and take somebody's house from them. Whether it's economic, whether it progresses economically, whatever. It is never okay to come in and force somebody out of their house to build a road through their front yard, ever.
There are valid uses of eminent domain, but you have to be able to prove that there's no way that you can protect the public other than by taking someone's property. And it's all about the public. You have to be able to prove we're protecting the public benefit. And at least in Oklahoma, they don't even care about trying to prove that.
I mean, with those budgets, you can tell they're just stealing money. Flat out.
They're giving money out to just be like, doesn't make this problem go away, make this disappear for me. And when you got what did you say, the 63% projection for
the revenue projection?
Yeah, revenue projection
was what,
63%? Yeah.
That doesn't prove that taking the property is going to be feasible economically.
For sure, and we've learned very quickly that it has nothing to do with engineering or economic viability of the actual road. It's to pad the real estate developers, the urban developers, the roadway contractors. In fact, one of the businesses that I've worked with in soil stabilization went out in January and bought a bridge company. You know why they bought a bridge company? Because the new turnpikes are going to have over 4,100 lineal feet of bridges. But how did they know to buy it in January? The public didn't know about the turnpikes until February 22nd. So you see, they're telling their buddies, hey, go buy these bridge companies, go do this because you're going to make $500 million. And then you can just sell it. You don't have to do it if you don't like it. Just have it for 3 years and then sell it. And so there's a bunch of inside cronyism that's happening.
Where are these environmental where are these environmental terrorist groups when you need them?
The Sierra Club, like, or even worse than that?
All I got to say is, do you know what happens to a tracked vehicle when it rolls over concertina wire?
Greenpeace?
Has any group ever offered counter or alternatives that can be expressed publicly? Hey, you are saying you designate the road into this region. We calculate, because right now there's a lot of data that did not exist a few decades ago. Because we can now see where everybody's moving. Like, just Google alone has all of the data that you could ever use.
I could kind of speak to that a little bit in the way it happened in the past. In the 90s, when we were doing this stuff, I actually had the brilliant idea, and I don't know if it was or not, but I said, let's call up the Sierra Club and see what they think about it. Because I'm not a tree hugger environmentalist. I'm a conservationist. Okay. But we decided, let's contact them and see what they have to say about it. Well, they had already written 2 or 3 position papers on the subject, and they were very glad that somebody contacted them, and they were very helpful with what was going on. In the current situation, I don't know. I know that Inger has some stuff going on environmentally. There are some avenues, but I don't know if there are any national groups that have done anything.
The Sierra Club we've been in touch with them, and they've been hesitant to jump on our lawsuit, but they are willing to help us get the word out with their mailing lists and potentially help us fund our lawsuits. But other than that, it's been crickets, to be honest. We've tried to, these turnpikes will decimate the only known vein of rose rocks in the entire world. Barite rose rocks, they're our state rock. Okay, so I'm a geologist, a geotechnical engineer, so that's a big deal to me. So I designated the area, I mapped the entire area as right here, you can see this pretty little rose rock. That comes out of the earth. That was in the Permian age, really long time ago, and they look like a rose. And once it's paved over, it's gone forever. So I designated the whole area as a geoheritage area, and I sent it off to the National Park Service and the Bureau of the Interior, and nothing. I heard nothing. So we invoked Senator Langford's office to contact the Bureau of Interior for us. It's been 6 weeks. Crickets.
May I ask, when you turned in the stuff to do that, did you turn it in through these same people, or did you turn it in directly yourself?
I turned it in directly myself through the button on the website that said, please submit your geoheritage area mapping here, and then, heard nothing. And so we have a lot of great environmental and important conservation legs to stand on. This area is very sensitive, and we don't want to be a concrete jungle. We don't want the high density urban development, and our environment honestly can't take it. And so we are looking for help from environmental groups to come in and give us some way to help win this war within Oklahoma, because the Oklahoma Sierra Club is not as strong as, say, the California Sierra Club or the Massachusetts Sierra Club. So the center of the country is maybe not as activist oriented as the coasts. So we would love some help on that if you would have any suggestions.
Well, I mean, that is definitely part of the reason why I kind of wanted to invite you guys on over here. Is I happen to have people that tune in not only countrywide but worldwide. So I just figure if there was anything I could do, I could get you guys heard out here, and that was a big reason. I was like, I got to have you guys on here. I need their story, put put out for people that have no clue about stuff like this going on, because I'm hoping to implore them to look into their own area. Like Luis, for example, I know you're in New York, so I imagine the levels of corruption in New York toll roads and such are probably just as high, if not worse.
Yeah, and Louis, were you the one who was talking about all the Google data that was available?
Well, for example, I remember there was a project, I think it was called Google Neighborhoods. I don't know how public it is, but Google Neighborhoods essentially was a project where corporations could tap in to all the data from the phones. So what they did is they just took and anonymized all the data for millions and millions and millions of people, and they create flows. Because at the end of the day, at the density, when we pack each other, we become like a fluid. So we can map out data. We can have ideas of where people are moving. And there was actually an interesting study that was done with mushrooms and the Tokyo metro system. I don't know if you've ever seen this. They basically put in the locations of the main hubs of traffic for the city, and the mushroom actually mapped out the city as good, if not better, than the Tokyo metro system, which is one of the best connected systems in the world, and relationships to how people move. And then this is one of the highest densities in the world. Now, that's information that's available. So we can create really good and well thought out systems today that are not based off this nonsense, that turnpike you showed. That's not science. That's garbage. And I can't imagine universities around the state don't want to conserve that beautiful piece that is exclusive to that region. Don't other educational institutions want to provide protection? Or it's Bob, there, because the leadership of the universities are in on it, and that's the problem. And so all this available data, I mean, I love it too. You know, I plot it and look at it, and we try to refute, and Michael too, we try to refute all of the data that the OTA is spewing. But at the end of the day, you know, and even think about how we travel now. We're not going to travel like we do now in 10 years. What about all the new technology, ETVOLs, and the AMA, the flying aerial manned aircrafts, and all that work that's being done, especially
petroleum use.
And we don't need new infrastructure. And as whoever lives in LA, you have 24 lanes. You do 24 lanes. It's called induced demand. The more lanes you give, the more cars that travel. And so what we need to do is do better traffic engineering, use the data that's available, and do smart. I love the blog called StrongTowns, and it talks about how you create cities for people rather than roadways for vehicles, because in 10, 15 years, we might not be traveling like we do now. And so the OTA, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, is using 1950s technology to destroy thousands of people's lives in 2022. And it's just somehow
just look at the Dutch. Just look at the Dutch. There are parts of the cities that they don't drive. They just bike, and they have a very healthy population because people are biking. And there's sections of the cities that don't even have streetlights. And they noticed that by taking the streetlights off, they made them safer. There hasn't been an accident in certain regions because they took off all of the lights. So
I could probably
like this is all available to read.
Yeah, Luis, I could probably speak a little bit to the Google data, in that they're not tracking people. They're not tracking cars. They're tracking phones. That's how they get the data. So, and the data is completely 100% skewed, because you can have one car driving down the highway that's got 5 people with phones. That's what they're tracking. And so their data is almost, I mean, it's cute, but it can't be counted on.
Have you guys heard that story about that old man that was messing up traffic by walking around with a wagon full of phones?
We had 100 phones on it. Yeah, he was so because of there was too much traffic in certain areas, so he was creating fake traffic. That was great. That was really smart,
man. Because they don't know how many cars are. Because I always puzzled over that. How do they? Because you could look at the traffic in Oklahoma City. Oh my God! How do they know? Is it the satellites? looking down? No, they're tracking phones as they go by and ping the cell phone towers.
And when you look at the actual traffic counters, the one that are counting actual cars, they're nowhere near the numbers that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is using as their justification. So when I called them out on that last month at the Oklahoma Turnpike Commission and said, you projected in the 90s when Dave was fighting this, you projected that the traffic on I-35 was going to be 180,000 vehicles per day in 2019. You know how many vehicles we have today in 2022? We have about 80 to 105,000. Depending on the time of the day. They were so far off that number that they projected isn't going to happen if we keep driving this way we were driving until 2080. And so the whole data system is so interesting to me and all the engineers, but I feel like from traffic planners, it's they don't care about it. They're just trying to meld it to be their justification. So again, it's all about the money. So they can make their contractors that money. And that's why they're doing this. These routes are not authorized. We have a lawsuit. Pike off OTA has a lawsuit in courts right now because these routes that they're trying to take our homes are not authorized. Yet they've just spent $130 million to design a 60% completion. And in October, they can start taking our homes. Now that's 8 months after they announced this project in a 15-year project. Why are they rushing? Because they've never been stopped before. And we have another lawsuit for the violation of the Open Meetings Act. So they didn't give enough information in their meetings for the public to know what the heck was going on. And that lawsuit actually gets heard on this Thursday, August 4th. OTA filed a motion to dismiss, and our lawyers are going to be in court on Thursday to hopefully win that part that it doesn't get dismissed and we can continue on. And we're fighting hard with the lawsuits.
They'll win. That's a slam dunk.
Yeah, lawsuits take money. And so that's why Pike off OTA was formed, to do fundraising opportunities. And we'd love for people to get involved. If you go to pikeoffota.com and click on the newsletter button, we get really great newsletters every week that tell you,
Oh, it looks backward.
Mirror your camera.
That's for my selfie.
Just hit mirror camera.
Click that newsletter, sign up, and we'll send you a newsletter every week that talks about our fundraisers. And this week that's coming out, I teach people how to do open record requests. We need help doing open record requests because I never knew how to do that before. For the last 3 months, I've been learning. We teach people how to write op-eds, and we're teaching people how to lobby up at the state capitol. And Michael's going to help people write legislation, and we're going to work with the legislators this fall. So we're looking for volunteers that want to get involved in some way, shape, or form, writing thank you notes, coming to our events, and just really being supportive of our goal in just stopping the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority from continuing to trample over the Oklahoman citizens.
Yeah, this week is definitely going to be a test. We already know that the Turnpike Authority is consumed the executive branch of our government, the legislative branch. This week we'll be putting the judicial branch to the test. And if all three end up corrupt, then we're not just encouraged, but we're obligated to remove that from our system.
We are. James Robert, I know this is not an Oklahoma thing. This is a United States thing. It is happening in every country. I mean, every state in our country. It is. It's like this weird movement that nobody can see until it pops up and affects them.
I mean, in the Netherlands, they're taking over the farms. They're to build cities.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And so the Pike off OTA is really trying to learn really quickly so we can educate the public and our citizens to learn how to fight back, learn how to talk to the senators and the House of Representative folks and convince them. We managed to convince the entire House of Representatives to unanimously vote to audit the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. Do you know the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority has never been audited in its 70 years of existence?
Well,
Never.
Amy, they have been audited, but it's an in-house audit that they hire themselves, and it's a little bit like the Fox Garden, the hen house audit.
Exactly.
Investigated themselves and found that they did nothing wrong.
Exactly.
Do you guys have an estimate of how much money they have spent for the citizens or for the state throughout those 70 years that they've been under operation? Like, how many billions of dollars have they
spent on what?
30, 50 billion? Do you have an estimate?
To build roads or?
Yeah, throughout their history, how much money have they totally managed?
That's part of our Open Records Act is their accounting history. If we could put a sum to the amount of bonds that they've pulled over the years, including the interest,
staggering.
I think it would be very eye-opening.
That could be the nail.
We've paid for these. But see, every time we ask for any kind of information, even just asking for justification for this turnpike, they bottle up, they fight it, and they just dig in. And it's the damnedest thing you've ever seen when you ask somebody why they're going to build a $5 billion turnpike and they say to cure rush hour traffic and then turn around. And yeah, they even say things like, we're not going to, we don't go over cemeteries. Well, they just approved an interchange going over a cemetery. Yeah. We've had people ask them if, with the impact studies that you say that you're going to do, are there any results that would make you move the route? And they say no. Now, that's probably the one bit of honesty that we've gotten from them. But it all, we all kind of started seeing that this apprehension to revealing their true intentions when we first started asking the legislation to ask them to do impact studies and to reveal what routes they looked at, what the justifications were for this route was. And what they did immediately was went and lobbied the hell out of the legislation until they shot down that bill to try to just take a peek under the skirt. And here we are with our lawsuits. We've got our requests to our discovery phase request request for production, whatever it's called in legalese. And so they immediately try to file a motion to dismiss, much like Jared Fogle of Subway. Motion to dismiss doesn't mean that they're innocent, but trying to push it up to avoid having to produce the documents that we're asking for, which is just basically and simply why. Should that be a very difficult question to answer, especially if you're looking at taking people's homes? If they ask you why, don't you feel at the very least that they'd be due a response other than to cure rush hour traffic?
Yeah, I almost cried the other day when I finally got some of my open record requests back, because I had asked, what are the impact studies that you've used to choose these 57 miles of roadways? Because as a civil engineer, you always do the impact study first before you pick the route. You don't reverse engineer it. That's just not how it works. Do you know what date their impact study was that they sent me? The date of that impact study? 1988. They sent me a study from 1988 with a route on it that's not even the same route as they picked today. It's 3 miles west. And they said, this is our justification for the route. I'm going, okay, what's wrong with this picture? Everything, and so it's, that's where we are with it. It's just everything we ask for. Like Michael said, they're dragging their feet, and then they're finally giving us stuff when they're being forced to, but it's not what you would expect. It's not, hey, 2 years ago, we did this environmental impact study and we found that it would be great. We can do this.
Check out Nick. That's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, 1988, 1993, 1993, and 1994. And the kicker is in those reports, they say the environmental impacts will be drastic. But hey, let's go build it anyway,
Yeah, that's it. Like Jim Brown said, this is how we built turnpikes for 50 years, and it's worked quite well.
Yeah, that's what their director of strategic communications has told us. So
it's worked out quite well.
Yeah, this is wow. I mean, and I really hope that everything that you guys have discussed this evening has really, brought brought to the attention of everybody, because like you said up there, Dave, this is a lot more than just your guys' state. I clearly see this stuff going on in many other places, and I hope, if anything, that you guys can gain some more traction, and maybe some other folks around here can be inspired to do something about the goings on of this kind of stuff in their state, because it is, I guess, as the link you sent me, it is kind of all smoke and mirrors what they're doing to you guys and everybody else that's out there, when they're just sitting there getting fat cats and rich off of the backs of all these people for nothing. Like
and none of them are getting arrested.
None of them are getting arrested.
Right. The country needs to stand up and take notice, because this isn't a unique situation here. There are places where it has completely spiraled out of control, and it's past the point of no return. Look at Texas. Texas, they don't have a route for citizen reform, where they don't have an initiative petition. The only way for their people to invoke change is to get on their knees and grovel to their legislation.
Wow.
And and one of the most terrifying aspects of this progression and this evolution of this Turnpike Authority and other Turnpike authorities across the country, in my opinion, or at least the one that keeps me up at night, is the plate pay system, where before your turnpikes were sort of limited to where you could put toll booths, toll operators. The plate pay system, all you need are two cameras. Two cameras can designate any stretch of road, whether purchased by tax dollars or not, and it can become a tolled road. In Texas, they got a hell of a problem with them designating stretches of tax purchased road as new toll roads. Pennsylvania, I think, is sort of, it gives me a little bit of hope that the system at least sucks, because from what I've read, it's kind of a 50-50 shot whether or not you actually get a bill in the mail. But suffice it to say, we're looking at every other aspect of our lives as becoming these subscription-based models and microtransactions. Microsoft Office is making me pay them every damn month for Excel. And we're looking into the future that if we don't get a hold of it now, if we don't get some kind of hold on just tolling roads, we got to make a choice. Do we want to be paying for our roads with taxes or tolls and taxes? There's no both, because in a world that there's both, we're going to be nickeled and dimed on our way just to buy milk, because they're going to have, even municipalities can get in on the action, putting up a couple of cameras between Main Street and, say, Flood Street, and charge 17 cents for that. And we won't be able to go across town without 100 little charges that add up to far more than we anticipated paying for the roads to begin with. So we didn't sign up for that. That was just pushed down upon us because we didn't act when we could have and when we still had the power to change it.
It's, Luis, I see that comment you're making, that's, something that's going on really is if we don't do something about this, every road in America could become a toll road. I mean, that's a real thing that could forecome if something wasn't done about it.
Well, all the smart cars, and like every car in the future will technically be smart. The government's going to track every single mile, and the agenda already stated by the Biden administration was we're going to tax every mile you drive. That's already been stated. And it's because they don't want people to drive. They don't want, it's a whole weird agenda.
They want to restrict private car ownership.
Yep. They already said that. They want to change things, but they're not offering solutions. They're just offering tyranny.
Yep. And those red light cameras, whether they be speed or toll cameras, they include a lot of copper, just so you know.
What does that mean?
Strip them down and turn it in for money.
Oh, got it.
Thing that you guys know about the National Council of State Legislatures. If you don't, you should. because the National Conference of State Legislatures is this national group that writes legislations for state legislatures. And they are totally funded by, let's just call them special interest groups. Okay.
I mean, LA was destroyed and turned into highways because of interest groups.
They write these bills. This group writes bills for state legislatures, and Senator so-and-so, Representative so-and-so will sign on, oh, that looks like a great idea. They won't read it. They won't write it, but they'll put their name on it. And that's how stuff gets passed. And they are very much behind this idea because gas taxes are going to go down because of electric vehicles and many other factors. They're going to go down. And so they've got to make it up, and they're going to call it user fees.
They're already doing it with the cigarettes because cigarettes companies actually made a pact with the states, and cigarette sales went down. Because cigarette sales went down so much, they started saying, okay, we can't tax this, so we're just going to make people smoke again. That's an actual policy that has been taken in action.
We can't
just want people to smoke again.
Oh, we have to make it up somehow, right?
Yeah, because they are owed money, but they are owed money based off tobacco sale. So they're pushing IQOS in relation to cigarettes, which is like smokeless cigarettes. But they're doing things like that. They're intentionally making it so people get on addictive substances in order to create higher revenues. So
is it okay to call a car that burns petroleum an addictive substance?
No, I'm talking about with cigarettes are doing it. So they're doing similar.
My analogy I'm trying to make here, because are we not addicted? Of course we are. I mean, come on.
I mean, we're addicted to mobility, but so is every person on the planet to an extent.
Now we're seeing alternatives. I can do this with batteries or whatever. But now they're going, oh no, we're not going to be able to collect a gas tax off of that.
So tolls.
Yeah.
Or miles.
It's in every state.
It's just getting to the point of ridiculousness, I think, all the way around. And, really, if you sit down and look at it long enough, yes, these roads are a big thing, but there is just so much more of this overreach going on in so many different ways. Like, these same people that we're talking about tonight, even over there in Oklahoma, that are doing this stuff with your guys' roadways and your houses and stuff. What else are they tied into? Like the way I look about things like this is, if you're greedy enough to go after something like that, you obviously have your hands in other places as well too. Well, so this stuff doesn't stop until we put a stop to it.
That's right. So we had an epic charter school scandal where the people stole $23 million from the state of Oklahoma. And the same person that was laundering their money is in charge of the Association of General Contractors. And I sent you a picture of the June cover of the Association of General Contractors, that they praised their state senators for voting against the citizens and with the general contractors on, pro turnpike stuff. But you're right. So the corruption that's happening in the transportation is also happening in education and all these other places. And it's the same players that are all tied together that are doing all of the money stuff. Yeah.
These fellers right here.
Yeah. So these are our state representatives and state senators that got called out on the. Yeah. And and one of those people is the Norman senator who wrote our bill and then sat on it in his transportation committee so it would die. So we would lose. But he pretended to help us. But then didn't. And so
dirty tricks.
Yeah, I must sincerely say that it's kind of a beautiful thing that corruption, to see corruption transcend party lines after this hyper partisan political session we've had for the last 2 or 3 years, to finally see something that goes beyond just conservative or liberal. And this corruption spans both sides of the aisle.
It's two wings of the same bird, people. It's two wings of the same bird.
Two sides of the same.
Exactly right. But what's even more frustrating is that a majority of people out there will still look at this and go, oh yeah, that turnpike is a good idea. It is a good idea. It is going to bring, yeah. you can't wake up enough people to make a difference, really.
We're trying really hard, but it is so difficult.
I could address.
I am not saying at all. I'm not saying don't give up. Don't give up by any means.
Yes.
I'm just saying the frustration, though, becomes overwhelming at times because people are just blind. You can show them so much evidence of corruption. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of people that have woke up to what you're experiencing right now, this is what it took to get to this point, was for 500 people to be in jeopardy of losing their homes to wake people up
2,400
to corruptions. To corruption.
2,400 people are going to lose their homes.
2,400 people.
Yeah, 600 homes. Yeah,
600 homes. 600 homes, you know.
I've had a lot of people ask me, Dave, what is your problem? Why don't you like turnpikes? Turnpikes are awesome. They save us time. Look at them. They're just great. And then I thought about that for the longest time. What is my elevator speech to these people? Okay, one line. The price is too high. The price is too high. 600 to 800 families being kicked out of their homes. That's too high of a price. 600 to 800 bulldozers coming along and smashing down their homes on their property and turning it into a highway. That's too high of a price. Fucking up the environment. That's too high of a price. Polluting the water supply. That's too high of a price. $5 billion more dollars of debt. Is that really what we want? That's too high of a price. And so
it's the price that the average person pays. If they understand that, oh, wait, my cost will go up by 50%.
Yeah.
That's what really people connect to, because people can't tangibly understand $5 billion. Like, those are numbers that actually human beings cannot comprehend. But what they can comprehend is, wait. I'm going to spend $150 more a month? What? No, I don't want to do that.
That's in Oklahoma, because about a year ago, we had a storm in Oklahoma that cost the whole state. What was it? How many billions of dollars was it? It cost billions of dollars because our utility companies weren't prepared to deal with it. And now they're tacking that money onto our utility bills, and people are going, wait a minute, why am I paying another $40 to $50 to $60 a month? And it's because the state allowed them to sell bonds to cover it. And so if you put it in that kind of a perspective, it's personal. It's a personal thing that people have to pay for, not just people that have to lose their houses, but everybody.
If the OTA disappeared tomorrow, that'd be about $300 million a year injected back into our economy. And that's a hell of a stimulus package.
You can also cancel debt that is illegally created. That's something that people don't think about. You can cancel illegal debt. And it sounds like a lot of this debt is considered illegal. Therefore, that can be canceled. That's another thing altogether.
Well, and then, you know, as you dig further into this, there seems to be that one more common denominator that we keep finding, which happens to be BlackRock. And, you know, we've made mention of them quite a few times on here, but I did want to bring up, since it was kind of just mentioned to me, I hope you guys know that BlackRock lost over $1 trillion in finances this quarter. So things are kind of looking up for people that are the little guys now, actually, I think, because they're taking a hurt of that size, then, you know, it might cause a domino effect for all we know. I mean, just something to pay attention to. I think I just wanted to point out right there.
And Oklahoma has one of the largest percentage of foreign investors in our real estate. So foreign investors are coming and buying up our housing. So the local people cannot get into their housing. Foreign investors are using cash, and they're doing 20-30% over asking price, and they're pricing out our local economy. And that's what, quite frankly, the OTA is doing to us. There are no comparable properties for the 600 families that will be displaced. We don't live in a subdivision. We live on 10 acres. Some of the people are going to lose 200 acres. Where are you going to find that? You're going to have to go 10, 20, 30 miles out of town to get a similar property. And now with the mortgage rates going up and the financial markets of trying to hedge against inflation. I think it's not a great time to be kicking people out of their homes.
Invitation Homes has 80,000 homes, single family homes under management.
BlackRock does?
Invitation Homes, which is a division of BlackRock, but they have multiple companies. This is just one of them, but
Oh my gosh.
BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, like hundreds of thousands of homes, and they are very badly run too. It's not like you want ever to be in a home owned by a hedge fund. It's expensive and it's garbage. It's the worst of the worst. You don't want that to exist.
I lived in a house that was owned by Invitation Homes. You're 100% right. They suck.
You want small landlords. You want the economy to, and the thing is, there are places that are trying to push legislation. So hedge funds are not allowed to buy property anymore because it's become a disease, because they're just hedging against inflation, but they're hedging against inflation in such a destructive manner. We already have such a high concentration of wealth. I mean, what is it exactly? These few companies have 22, the top three have 22 trillion under management, or 20 trillion, because the stock market went down, but insane amount of money. It's bigger than many countries on the planet's economies.
Yeah.
What is it? BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Well, there's another one too. There's
I think that's the three big
list.
ones: BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Yeah, people like to gripe about it's all BlackRock because they're have such a horrid history and blah blah blah. But it's also Vantage, which holds my Roth IRA. So
What did you say?
what do you do? Vantage holds my Roth IRA. So what am I supposed to do? Ditch it? Because these are just companies. They look at an advantage. They go, let's buy that. But BlackRock, they do have kind of a sleazy history.
And they're all connected to what's ESG, environmental social governance. So it's all connected. Actually, Sri Lanka, the country, imploded because they were the most ESG compatible country on earth. So these policies are extremely destructive, and they are coordinated, and they're doing tests in different places to see what they can get away with. And Oklahoma is a victim of this, because I even heard of other investors say, oh, Tulsa's getting billions of dollars, invest in Tulsa because it's very cheap, and you can make a lot of money in relation to how much. So there's people investing a lot of money into Oklahoma, because also there's a lot of people moving away from California into places like Oklahoma. So your state is booming, but you definitely don't want horribly corrupt people like that to run things, because they're just going to make money and everybody's going to suffer, and everybody becomes slowly poorer until you all become serfs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you just hit it right on the nose there, Luis. I couldn't agree with that anymore. That's exactly what kind of stuff it's going to head to if something's not done about it. But again, that's why I have you guys here this evening, because you guys are the forefront of this in Oklahoma. And, I applaud you. I applaud you guys for standing up for everyone out there. And I applaud you guys and all the hard work you guys are doing. And, I'm going to make sure that all you guys that are out here watching and listening and everything across Rumble and Odyssey and BitChute and everywhere you stream us at, that you guys are able to get back out to these folks and see if there's anything you can do to join and help. Because I think every voice that's tied back to it can do something about it. Like this was a big thing that I'm all about doing, is just bringing the awareness to these situations, because once you can bring the awareness to the situation, even if it is in a place that you're not living, it'll make you start looking around the place that you are and probably find a lot of the same thing. Bandit, I seen you over there mouthing something. You got something for me, bud?
All good here.
All right. Well, is there anything else you guys would like, to throw out there before we get ready to sign off for the evening? Of course, you guys, like I said, I will make sure your links are out there shared for everyone.
Thank you so much for asking us to do this. I think it's great. And again, just if we can get people to check out our website, pikeoffota.com, and click on our newsletter, we'll keep everybody informed no matter where you live. And you might learn something useful that you didn't know about how to interact with a corrupt government.
Yeah.
Go to Pike Off OTA, 3 separate words, on YouTube, and you'll see the many videos that have been posted that will help people with this.
And also hit the .com, pikeoffota.com.
Yeah.
for the listeners and not the viewers. And but really appreciate this opportunity to get our message out. I mean, we're just a group of ordinary Joe citizens that wholeheartedly agree that if we can leave our children nothing else, it'd be a free and a just state.
Right
now, we've got to tend to business to make sure that can happen.
Maybe we should give Randy the last word because he is our director of strategic communication.
What you got, Randy?
Oh gosh, I do appreciate the opportunity to share our message with you guys, and whoever out there can get on board and help with I'm certainly biased. Again, like Amy and I both are in the direct path of this turnpike and stand to potentially lose our homesteads that I've been here since 1979. Amy's been here, almost 20 years?
Yeah.
And so it's very near and dear to our hearts for that reason. But we've talked about so many other reasons why it's so important to people all over the country because of the way these processes work or actually don't work in the favor of the citizens of our country and the things that we could stand to lose. So this is a great opportunity to just have the opportunity to inform more people about what's going on with us and what could potentially happen in your neighborhood next week.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you guys, I'm going to make sure I keep in the loop with you guys because you guys are welcome back anytime when we have some updates, stuff like that. You guys are always welcome to come up here and preach it back out, bring it back around because I'm all for bringing guests back and having more conversations.
There'll be some new stuff next week.
I've made so many great friends, throughout doing all of this and stuff. So, just like evolving with this stuff is great. And I really do hope the best for you guys because I don't want to see you fantastic people lose everything that you guys have worked so hard for. I think all four of you are just amazing, and I have had a blast this evening with you. And I'm in your corner. I hope other folks out here that are listening and watching and enjoying this episode that they're going to do what they can, even if it's just showing you support on your page and stuff, man. I think that's just an important message there is just showing each other that we have more alike than we don't. And I think the biggest thing we have alike currently in our world of affairs is we have one backwards, dark, corrupt government that has just been sticking it to us for quite some time. And it's time to work on something new for all of us, for our kids, for our grandkids. I have children myself. I don't want to leave them the garbage that's going on now. I've got plenty to work on to make sure that they've got their own too. So, it hits home when we start talking about family and stuff and, things that you've worked so hard for all your life to have. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. So I do appreciate you guys so much for being so willing to come and join me this evening. We try to have a blast here. I hope you guys have enjoyed yourself. And, for all the folks out there, please, you guys make sure that you guys get back to their links. I promise you they'll be all there for you. You guys also make sure you get out there and check out our sponsors for us, where you can find those links. And hop back over to unconstitutionalawakening.com and get you some sweet Unconstitutional Awakening merch. You can rock this flag that I got behind me on your shirt nowadays. So you guys have a great night hanging out for all this stuff. And I got one last thing for everybody before we go. What did the ocean say to the pirate?
Arr.
Nothing. It just waved. Good night, everyone. Have a great evening.